Yes, Blues, welcome back to Bringing the Blues, hosted by me, Lewis. Today, I'm going to be doing a tier list, but I'm going to be doing it for all of the signings made under Roberto Mancini. 21 players were signed under Mancini. Now, we're going to be looking at 20 of those players. Number 21 is Adam Johnson, and you can do your own research on him, but I didn't feel it was right to include him in the video, so he's not in this video today. So 20 players that shaped the future of Manchester City, what it is today, the club that we all love. It wasn't always, four on the bounce, Champions Leagues. We've had ups, we've had downs, but the Mancini era was, for me, it's still my favourite Manchester City period. It's still it's a team that's close to my heart because I was a young lad, watching that team, winning the Premier League for the first time is something that I will never forget. So, without further ado, we'll get started now. There's 5 different categories that we're going to be using to rate some of these players. The flops are the players who came in and, overall just a bad signing, had a negative time at the club. It didn't work for one reason or another. And we'll be going into all of the reasons why these players are being put where they're going to be put. Then you've got the forgotten. So, not necessarily, bad players, but maybe, aging players who've moved to the club, had cameos for the club, but, not enough to label them a flop, but, definitely not enough to call them a citizen, which is the next one. That is a steady Eddie. Those are your solid squad players who came in, bulked up the squad, had good, good performances, maybe stepped in for players when they were injured. They are the citizens. Then we get to your kind of cult heroes, the game changers, the players that pin down a spot in some of these, Premier League winning teams. And then finally, you've got the best of the best, the cream, the creme, whatever you want to call them, the legends, the players that, have been immortalised at the club. Maybe they've got statues at the ground now, but the players that we will never forget, the players that made us fall in love with watching Manchester City. So we'll jump straight into it, and let's have a look here at the first player. We've got Gaël Clichy. Now, I've always had a soft spot for Gaël Clichy. I think, Kollarov's also in this list, but I think as an out-and-out left-back, I think he's probably the best left-back that we had, that we've ever had up until that point. I remember, the opening goal against Stoke in 2011, long time ago now. But he was known obviously more for being a defender than scoring goals. He joined from Arsenal. He was known for obviously his time at Arsenal at that point, but great mentality. He was great going forward. Had some really good well-timed runs, and his finishing was okay. But during that title challenging seasons that we had, he was just solid. He did struggle with injuries. He did lose his spot to Kolarov in his later years at City, but Clichy was a consistent performer in those early seasons. But what a player, Gaël Clichy, and he's going to go into. I'm going to put him. I'm torn really here between putting him in the citizens and the game changers, because obviously as far as we've not had a lot of great left backs, and I do think he was a great left back for City. I'm going to keep him in the citizens for now, but I'm going to keep him near the top. I may change my mind as this video goes on. We'll see. But yeah, top player. And then we've got Edin Dzeko, game changer, certified game changer. That was his job. He was a super sub. Great player. I think the crowning achievement, which people do, funnily enough, forget about, is the goal against QPR to get us level at the Etihad. Obviously, we were losing that game. We were 2-1 down. Dzeko, big header, dying moment, bang, we're level. You know, that QPR moment, 93-20, it doesn't happen without this man. He scored some massive goals for City as well. I remember the goals against Roma. He scored bags of goals against United as well. And I'll never forget the goal against Spurs at White Hart Lane. The pass to Barry with the back pass, and then he just curled it into the corner. He could score any way you wanted to. Could score with both feet. Great in the air. Just a top player. Not good enough. He wasn't consistent enough. Unfortunately, he was kept out of the team, obviously by, Carlos Tevez at times, and then Aguero. But again, two top, fantastic players in their own right. But a real top player. I think he had 189 appearances for City. And he scored a lot of goals in there. So I think 72 goals. So yeah, top player. Moved over to Roma, but he was great. He was prolific. He's been prolific everywhere he's been. So Edin Dzeko, certified game changer. Then we've got Maicon. Now he actually did score in his debut, if I can remember, against Stoke in 2012. He was one of the greatest right backs to ever play football. Unfortunately, he wasn't that player when he joined for City. But that debut goal probably had people excited. But he struggled to adapt. It's a difficult league to come to, especially at that age. And he only made 13 appearances. But he was way past his prime, to be honest with you, and he just couldn't handle the physicality. So, great player, just not for City, and definitely a flop. I think he was only 31. I think 31 isn't too old, but as a right back, as a lad that relied on his legs just gave way, didn't they? El Maggio, David Silva, in my opinion, the greatest player to ever wear a Manchester City shirt. Very controversial, probably. There's a lot of people who will put De Bruyne ahead, and I'm not going to argue with you there. I think, De Bruyne, obviously incredible as well. But for me, growing up and having that Mancini team, I'd never seen a player like David Silva. And I still haven't, in all honesty. And it's a player that we actually have missed. And we've never really replaced David Silva. I just don't think you can replace someone like him. The way that he played in the pockets, his passing, cute passes that would just slice you open. I remember his first goal was against Blackpool, and I know it was Blackpool, but you play you're against, don't you? And it was in the Premier League. If you've not seen it, give it a watch. He just cuts in and out of two players, gets into the box, and just curls it. A proper magician. For those of you that maybe are a little bit too young to have seen his best, have a look at him on YouTube. There's a reason why a lot of us still think he's the greatest to ever put on a shirt. I think he's one of the greatest, period. So it's no surprise he's going straight in there at legend. He's got a statue obviously at the ground now. He's been immortalised at the ground as he should. So for those of you that maybe live overseas, planning to go to the Etihad at some point, go and have a look at the statues, because David Silva's is there, and rightly so. Legend. Now, we've got James Milner. Now, I'm going to put aside my personal feelings in this video. Otherwise, I'd be putting him in flop. I hated how he acted towards the end. I hated the fallout. I hated the fact that he moved to Liverpool. But you have to put that aside, and we have to remember how good he was at City when he was there. I think he was a game changer. I think, he had some really, really big moments for us. I mean, scoring the winning goal, or scoring a goal against Bayern Munich in the Champions League back in 2013, was a massive moment for the club. It was a massive moment for him. But he could play. You could put him anywhere, Milner. He was so versatile. But he was a big game player. He was a real big game player, and he'd give you a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, near enough every game that he played. And he left everything on the pitch. So as a player for us, he was a top. He really was. He was a top player. We did not want to get rid of him. I believe when he left, he actually had the second or third most appearances for City in that season, but he obviously wasn't happy with that. I think he wanted to play in the bigger games, and yeah, he ended up moving to Liverpool. And again, you know, he had a great career at Liverpool, which is a shame. But no, he was a top player. So yeah, he's going to go into the game changers. And then we've got Owen Hargreaves, flop. One of the few players that was obviously played for United and then, you know, played for City. The player that United had, the player that he was at United versus the player that we had here, completely different, way past his prime. You know, his body was made of tissue paper at this point. I remember when we signed him because he put up a video, which fair play to him, to be honest, because not a lot of players have done it really. But he put up a video of him training at his house, doing drills and so on, showing that, you know, he could train and he was fit. And when he was fit, you know, he was a great player. He was a top player for Manchester United and Bayern Munich, but he was just too injury prone. And I believe when we signed him, he was on a pay for a play contract. So I believe so. He was only actually paid when he appeared for the club, when he made appearances. But you know, listen, he was way past his best, injury prone. He did score on his debut. Actually, I remember it. I'm sure it was I think it was the Carling Cup back then. Is it the Carabao now? It's always changing names, isn't it? We scored an absolute worldie against Birmingham in the League Cup in 2011, and it was sensational. But yeah, that was about it really. So is it harsh to call him a flop? I think. I'm gonna keep him in as a. Was he a flop though? No, I don't think he was a flop. I think that's harsh because I don't think we ever intended him to come and play 30 games, and you know, shown by the pay for the play. I'm gonna put him in forgotten rather than a flop. It's probably a bit harsh. I'm moving on to, Mario Balotelli. If you didn't get to watch him play, again, for those of you that may be younger, Mario Balotelli was an enigma. He was a maverick. He was bigger than himself in every sense of the word. You didn't know if he was going to get a red card, score an overhead kick, punch someone. He was just crazy, and you know he had no idea either. You know, there's that famous story, Mourinho, when he played for him in Milan, saying, "Look, just see the game out." And I think he got sent off 2 minutes later, something daft like that. That was Balotelli, but he was an enigma. He could score from anywhere. I remember he had a ferocious shot on him. But you know, his picture there, the "Why Always Me," arguably the most iconic goal in a derby. You know, fought for Manchester City anyway. I remember that. Just aura. He just, the guy had an insane aura, and he was a game changer. His only assist for Manchester City came in that 3-2 win against QPR to win us the first league title. You know, some stats like that they're just unbelievable, aren't they? Like how did he not get any other assist? But you know, he saved his only one there, didn't he? So Balo, top player, never lived up to his potential, unfortunately. But at City, yeah. One of the players that you always want to see on the score sheet. Have a look at his goal against Villa, the old shoulder tap. He was just a cold player. Costel Pantilimon. Costel was absolutely massive. I think he was like 6'7", 6'8". He was huge, and he was. You know what? He was a very, very tidy second choice keeper, alongside obviously having Joe Hart at number one. Steady. He had a good. I think he'll look back at his time at City, and I think we will. And I think he was fantastic. Really, one of the best second keepers we've had, for a long time. Saved the penalty in the 2-1 win over Newcastle in 2013, and he had a great run in those cup competitions, your FA Cups and your Carabao. And I remember under Mancini, I think we played him all the way to the final, which I thought was really harsh actually. And then we opted for Joe Hart instead. But he was never going to displace Joe Hart. I mean, Joe Hart, one of the best to ever do it in the Prem. Fantastic career with Manchester City, he moved to Sunderland in 2014, where he did become a first choice goalkeeper. But yeah, massive guy, big presence, nice little story, but steady. Javi Garcia, flop. Yeah, absolute flop. I believe he came from, was it Benfica? Yeah, it was Benfica. He signed as a defensive midfielder, but to be honest with you, he always looked like it looked like he should have been modelling than playing football. That's probably a bit harsh, isn't it? But it's true. He was a good-looking guy. Unfortunately, he just wasn't very good for Manchester City. I don't know if it was the pace of the Premier League was too much. Maybe it was the physicality. But he just wasn't very mobile. And to be a good defensive midfielder, you've got to turn on a dime, haven't you? But he was good in the air, and he did score some good goals. A big goal against Stoke City in the FA Cup. But moved to Zenit again, and I think he was a decent player for Zenit. But for us, it just never happened. He just didn't adapt, unfortunately. So yeah, flop. Jerome Boateng, he's going right at the top here. He's on right at the top. Yeah. For the potential, one of the biggest flops we've ever had. Might be the biggest flop under Roberto Mancini. Nothing worked about that signing, unfortunately. You'll have seen the famous picture. He was one of the players signed alongside, was it Samir Nasri? Who else did he sign with? I can't remember. That's that famous picture of Mancini with the four of them. Very, very, very highly thought of player. It just didn't work for him. He didn't adapt to the Premier League at all. He scored in his debut though. I remember against Chelsea. It was a really good start. I thought, we've got some player here, but it never happened. He just didn't adapt. Made 24 appearances. We'd often play him at right back instead of centre back as well, and he just never settled. Didn't have great things to say about the club. Thought we were unprofessional. We weren't up to scratch with the training facilities. Maybe he was right. Maybe at the time he was right. And he moved to Bayern Munich, became one of the world's best defenders. So had a great career, just not at City. But yeah, big time flop. Alexander Kolarov. I'm going to put Kolarov in the Citizens. As steady as you want, really. Never the most exciting player in the world to watch. He only had one skill move. He used to chop it. He used to run and chop in and cut in. He had one skill move, did it all the time. It worked though, to be fair. But he was known for his free kicks. If you've not seen them, just YouTube Kolarov free kicks. He used to terrify goalkeepers and defenders because there was always rumours and stories that he'd broken his teammates' wrists in training and so on. And he did have a ferocious free kick on him. He scored a stunning free kick against Bayern Munich, and I think he scored another one against Real Madrid. He was just quality at free kicks. If there was anyone taking free kicks, he was your man. But he started to struggle with injuries, and he did lose his spot to Gael Clichy in the end. But he was a top player, steady as you want. So yeah, well deserved there. Samir Nasri is going into the game changers, and I'm going to put him below. Yeah, I'm going to put him below Dzeko just for that, for the QPR goal. Samir Nasri had the potential to be one of the greatest ever players for Man City, right up there in the legends. His ability was unreal. If you never watched him play, have a look on YouTube, speak to your dad, your brother, whoever. The season with him and David Silva under Pellegrini, when we did the double, he was sensational. Scored massive goals. Big goal against Chelsea in 2012 during, for a Premier League game. That was a massive game, massive game. But he was just slick. He had flair. But he did struggle with injuries, and there was a lot of controversies off the pitch. Doping bans and so on. That was after City, to be fair. But he was a top player. I loved him. I wish he'd have stayed on and worked under Pep. I'd have loved to see what Pep could have done with him, during those latter years. But yeah, top player, game changer for sure. Nastasic. Nastasic is quite, I think, quite a sad story really for a lot of City fans. My age anyway, because when he came to the club, he was fantastic. He had a great first season with the club. Scoring on his debut against Stoke. He was a young lad. I think he won the Young Player of the Year. I'm sure he did, or Man City's Young Player of the Year. He was so composed for a player of that age, but unfortunately, he never quite hit those heights. I remember at the game against Real Madrid where he pocketed Cristiano Ronaldo. Unfortunately, we just didn't see enough of that. We never really saw that level again. I think he's had a decent career. He moved to Schalke, and he's kind of been dotted around Europe. I think he's had a good, a decent enough career. I think he's just a steady Eddie, isn't he? So we'll put him in the Citizens. It's a shame because again, I think, from what we saw, he could have been one of the best, but it just didn't. It didn't work. And Patrick Vieira, Prem legend. One of the best midfielders to ever grace the Premier League. For Man City, no. He joined, way past his prime, late into his career. But he had certain games where you could see that class still. These top players, they never lose it. You look at De Bruyne now, for example. He's not as good as he has been in previous seasons, but he still pops up with a beautiful ball or a goal. And these players of that caliber, they're always great to watch. Vieira was still good to watch, even in his City top. I think signed for his experience, the name, the mentality that he had more than anything. But he struggled with injuries, and like I said, he was way past his prime. 46 appearances, but he was, I think, seen as that mentor figure under Mancini. He ended up transitioning actually to working in the development stage, and then obviously became a manager at various clubs. So I'm going to put him in. I'm going to put him in the forgotten. I don't think he sits alongside these players. Now, as a career in his prime, he'd be right up here, wouldn't he? But for Man City, a lot of people actually don't even realise he played for us. He's obviously always going to be remembered for his time at Arsenal. So, fortunately, I have to put him in the forgotten. Richard Wright, the forgotten. I think he made one appearance for his club, for Manchester City even, and he was again brought in to give experience to the other keepers, Pantilimon and Joe Hart. I believe he still works at the club as a goalkeeping coach. So yeah, nice little career, I think. So ended well for him anyway, sticking with the club. But yeah, he wasn't a steady Eddie, was he? He had one appearance. Jack Rodwell. I'm going to put Jack Rodwell right up here. He's going into the flops. So, Jack Rodwell, I think, had a lot of potential, and he just never lived up to it. He signed as a young lad from Everton, but he just struggled with injuries. Made 25 appearances. It was a massive disappointment, and I don't think he ever recovered from that, to be honest with you. But he was built up as the next kind of big England star, maybe a future England captain. And it just never materialised. Moved to Sunderland in what was just a horror transfer there. Wasn't training, wasn't letting people know what he was doing. But yeah, he's one of the worst signings we've ever made, to be honest with you. Scott Sinclair. Was he a flop? I think he was, wasn't he? I think he was. It's just a shame because, again, Scott Sinclair had a lot of potential. Moved from, I think it was Swansea he came from, and he was one of their best players, obviously. But unfortunately, I think that was his level. I think the step up to Manchester City, was too much. And he was so inconsistent. He was frustrating to watch because you could see the obvious potential there. But that was it. He just never adapted really to the team. Struggled to play in the Premier League. 19 appearances for the club, and he was loaned out, multiple times. So yeah, flop. Stefan Savic. I'm gonna put Stefan Savic here. Obviously, actually, Stefan, to be fair to him, has had a good career, decent career after Man City. I think he made his debut against Swansea. It's a 4-0 win against Swansea. He was a young lad when he came, but he just never adapted. And he had a lot of high-profile errors. Cost us the game against Arsenal. He just couldn't handle the physicality of the Premier League. I remember the big injury that Company got, and those famous last words he said when he said, don't worry, I can step in. I'm ready to cover him. He was not ready. He had a lot of bozo moments, and then he was shipped out to Fiorentina. But he did really well at Atletico Madrid, and he's had a really good career since. I remember that game a few seasons back. Him and Grealish going at each other. And he's definitely got his physicality up now. Anyway, Yaya Toure, Boomf, legend. Technically speaking, arguably the greatest ever player to play for Manchester City. What that man could do with a ball, I've never seen it since. He's just one of those generational players. We've never had a Yaya Toure, anyone like Yaya Toure since, not even close. The 2012-2013 season, his numbers were absolutely staggering. Was it 20 plus goals, 19 assists, 20 assists? The goals against Newcastle, prior to us winning the first league title, the winner. I remember that winner putting it through Van der Sar's legs against United in the semi-final. Incredible. Just a legend, and he should have a statue, to be honest with you. I think he should have a statue, but there was a lot of things that happened outside of the club. The birthday cake saga, if you don't know what that is, give it a Google. He was really upset that apparently we didn't get him a birthday cake. His agent was always causing issues between him and the club, and even to the point where apparently there was a curse put on the club, which was later lifted ahead of us winning the Champions League. But listen, a certified legend. And we're finishing with Mr. Man City here. Not arguably, the greatest ever striker to play in the Premier League, the greatest ever striker to play for Manchester City, obviously, and that is Sergio Aguero, our cunt Aguero. I could do a video, a 40-minute video, just talking about how good this man was. He was a goal machine. I think he's still got the record for most goals against the top 6 teams. He terrorised everyone. He absolutely tore apart Phil Jones every time they played. And I'm sure Phil Jones has nightmares about him now because he just made a meme out of him every single time. The 93-20, the Aguero goal, the Aguero moment, iconic. That Balotelli assist that we spoke of earlier, bang, one touch, past Paddy Kenny, whack. History was made. And who knows where we'd be without that goal, but again, arguably the greatest ever player to play for Man City. It all depends on what your preferences are, but an absolute certified legend, and who also has a statue at the ground. So go ahead, have a look if you've not seen it. Did struggle with injuries. He'd have had even more goals if it weren't for some of the injuries that he did have. But what a player, to come in and replace Tevez. He wasn't brought in to replace Tevez. He played alongside Tevez. I remember that Norwich game where they played together and just tore Norwich to bits. And I thought Tevez was, again, the greatest striker I'd ever seen at City. But Aguero was just, he was a different level. And that is it, folks. That is, this is my tier list here. So you can see here we've got 3 legends in Silva, Yaya and Aguero. No surprises there. You've got your game changers, Dzeko, Nasri, James Milner and Mario Balotelli. You've got the citizens here, your steady Eddies, Clichy, Kolarov, Nastasic and Costel Pantilimon. The forgotten, Hargreaves, Vieira and Richard Wright. And then the flops, Boateng, Rodwell, Savic, Maicon, Javi Garcia and Scott Sinclair. Guys, if you like this type of content, do let me know. If you disagree with what I've put, again, let me know. Put it in the comments. You know, should Clichy have been moved up to game changer? That's the only one that I'm a bit on the fence about, because he was very underappreciated, I think, overall at his time at City. I think he was a top player. I'm going to keep him there for now. Let me know in the comments. Am I wrong? Maybe there are other players that you think should have dropped down or should have dropped up. Maybe I was a little bit harsh. But do like and subscribe. It really helps me get it out there. I want to get more Blues involved. It's a community that we're growing here on Bringing the Blues. Thank you all. Enjoy whatever you're doing for the rest of the week. And I'll see you all on the next one.